Does your financial status impact how your autism affects you? Of course it does. But I don't hear anybody talking about that. So let's break it down. Before we get into it, my name is Heather. I am a late diagnosed ADHD and autistic human being, and I make videos about neurodivergence. Welcome to my channel if you're here for the first time, and thanks for coming back if you're returning. What got me on this line of thought is something I discussed in my last video, which was love on the spectrum. And in watching the show, I realized that a lot of the participants seem to be very financially well off. And in researching that, I realized that some of their parents are actors and some of their parents are famous attorneys that have tons of disposable income. So I would think that they would have been exposed to probably the best options for treatments, for care, and things of that nature. But I'm not even talking about the financial barriers to receiving a diagnosis or receiving treatment and care. I'm talking about everyday life and how not having finances impacts your abilities as an autistic person. We already know that statistics show that the employment rates of autistic people are abhorrently low. I will say I think those numbers are pretty skewed because I don't think a lot of the late diagnosed population is included in those surveys. And I think that that would change some of the numbers. But the majority of us are or underemployed according to these statistics. So how does that affect or impact how autism itself impacts your everyday life? Well, let's take it from a fundamental perspective, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Your basic needs for safety, things of that nature like food, housing, stuff like that. If those aren't being met, you really can't pursue much else in your life. And if you are unemployed or underemployed and not receiving any assistance from your government, then your whole life is about survival. It's about making sure those basic needs for housing and food are met. And how are you doing that if you're or underemployed? It's very difficult to meet your basic needs. So that begs the question, how many people that are homeless, how many people that are in prison, how many people that have been in and out of shelters, things like that, are autistic and just incapable of working in a current status in what society considers a functional capacity? And it's not even about, do you have a job or do you not have a job? Do you pay taxes or do you not pay taxes? Because that's been brought into the realm of conversation as well. It's also about the little things. Like I said, being able to provide food for yourself and your family, having adequate housing. How hard is it to find comfort in your day-to-day routine as an autistic person when you are constantly concerned with whether or not you can feed yourself that day? And God forbid that you're in a state of burnout or meltdown and incapable for cooking for yourself. You can't just order DoorDash. You can't just have somebody prepare a meal for you or hire a chef. Those things just aren't accessible to you. Other things that people consider conveniences, like a car, being able to go somewhere to a job, to get your own food, to get to your education, to get to anything. If you don't have a vehicle and you don't live in an area that provides public transportation, because not all areas have public transportation, rural areas don't have bus routes, and buses still cost money. So there's one huge barrier and thing that will exacerbate your autism because you can't ever be comfortable. You can't ever come to some sort of peace in your own body, in your own life, if you are constantly worried about, how am I going to get food? How am I even going to get somewhere to get food? Another thing that people consider convenience is having food delivered to your home. Walmart Plus, things like that they provide, delivery of your groceries and the ease of ordering online. That's not accessible to everyone. That's not accessible to a lot of people. And that is something that, as an autistic person, would kind of make your life a little easier. But let's talk about the bigger things as far as autism treatment and things like that go. Diagnosis. There's a huge barrier to receiving a diagnosis as an autistic person because it's expensive and insurance doesn't always cover that. I know mine didn't. And then even if you are lucky enough to receive the diagnosis, what do you do after that? If you're not considered level 2 or level 3, you're not going to get any supports or disability ratings through the government, at least in the United States. They're not going to provide you with any sort of help, any sort of assistance. You have to do it on your own. And if you have the financial means to pay for those things, fantastic. Even a coach, something like that, can be so helpful in helping you sort and organize your thoughts. But low support needs people, especially those that are financially challenged, often don't even have those options. So getting a diagnosis is completely off the table. And even if you were lucky enough to get one, getting any kind of support, help, therapy at all is just not an option. And let's look at this from a historical perspective. Before autism was even a diagnosis, autism existed. It just wasn't a thing that we called autism. But how it was viewed was considerably different depending on your financial status. If you were rich, you were just considered eccentric and quirky. There's plenty of examples of people that, looking back from a historical perspective, probably would have received an autism diagnosis. But because their families were well off and they were able to kind of structure an environment in which they thrived, they were able to go on and become scientists, authors, things like that. But how many people that lived in poverty that also, from a historical perspective, would have been considered autistic, struggled and did not thrive because they were forced to work in conditions that were not suitable to their brain, were not suitable to their functionality, and they flounder. And that's one thing that, despite the expansion of the diagnostic criteria, has not changed. When I say in videos that autistic people need support and community, these are the things that I'm talking about because supports are not free. Coaching is not free. Therapy is not free. Even the little convenience things that I was mentioning earlier, like being able to order your groceries and not have to expose yourself to a crowded store full of fluorescent lights, those things cost money. And if you don't have money, those things aren't available to you. I appreciate you listening today, and I hope this provided some expanded perspective on the financial impact of autism and how your financial status really does impact your ability to thrive as an autistic person. I would love to hear in the comments your stories of maybe how things that are conveniences have aided you if you're able to afford those, or how you may have struggled simply because of your financial status. Because I know that it has, being somebody who has lived very close to the poverty line throughout my life, had a huge impact on how my autism affected me and the stressors, the additional layers of stress that those provided to me. And I would love to hear how those have impacted you as well. As always, thank you for listening. Thank you for liking, thank you for subscribing, and any comments or interaction that you give. I truly appreciate it, and I would love to start a conversation about this. If you are a creator and you are watching, I'd love to hear your side of the story. How has your financial status impacted your autism? Do you feel like that your financial status had made life easier or harder for you? All right, as always, thank you, and I love you.